Just like a liberal, to bring a bat to a gunfight. Fact and fiction about arming our school teachers on today's AK Show.
This is Alex, AK Kincaid. Welcome to the AK Show.
Issuing these little mini bats to our school teachers reminds me of after the San Bernardino terrorist shooting. Remember that? And Homeland Security issued statements to the defenseless government employees who had no way of defending themselves against such an act. And Homeland Security said, you know what? If there's an active shooter at your place of work, you should try to hide. And if you can't hide, you should pick up some kind of an object. And the employees are going like, what, a stapler? And throw the stapler at the shooter. Folks, this really is, to some of our fellow Americans, an answer. It's a viable option in their minds to someone who is shooting at defenseless children in our schools. And the school district that came up with this idea in Pennsylvania told reporters that it took them 5 years to come up with a policy to tell teachers and students that if there was a shooting, they should try to hide. And they said, you know what? After the Parkland school shooting, we realized that that wasn't the best answer and we had to come up with other options. So we polled parents of students, and the parents told us that we should arm teachers with things like rat poison or mace, or objects to throw. And there was a school district that actually gave students rocks, buckets of rocks, to throw at the shooters because they are so appalled by our Second Amendment and the idea of actually being responsible for your own life. And they don't want to teach kids, apparently, to be responsible for their own lives. Is a 71-year-old high school teacher who saw the little newspaper article about the school district in Pennsylvania and said, what a joke. And that's exactly right. What a joke. Folks, your fellow Americans, some of them, believe that a little bat or throwing objects is actually an answer to school shootings. It's really no wonder that our schools, our schoolhouses, become slaughterhouses when we have the mindset that we should just run and hide. We can't defend ourselves. We abhor the Second Amendment, or some people do. And we protect our banks and our airports better than we are protecting our defenseless children. And there are people who don't want to do anything differently. They want to scream and cry for gun control. And for all the kids who are being misled, and the media that wants to tout misinformation and say that the United States is a place where we aren't safe and we need more gun control laws, those really aren't the facts. And if you don't know the facts, I'd recommend you read my book, because you'll sound a lot more intelligent when you try to argue with people, or at least have an intelligent discussion about firearms and the Second Amendment. This is a very safe nation. And these other countries with gun control laws that are being touted as places that are more advanced and safer, that's a bunch of bull. It's not accurate, and you need to do some studying and figure this out. But my show is not about ranting, so I'm going to stop ranting. What we're here today to talk about are what the laws really are, because this information is being completely misconstrued. I'm a lawyer. I'm going to talk to you about the laws. Do we need another one? You know, we've got this law proposed, a new law proposed in Congress, a bill 4909, that is supposed to help with the endeavor to arm schools or protect our children. And it's called the Stop Violence Act. Do we really need that? Does it do anything? We're going to talk about that. So what laws do we have? Well, in 1990, Congress passed the Gun-Free School Zones Act, which makes school zones generally killing zones. They're gun-free. Guns aren't allowed within 1,000 feet of a school zone. But that law also has exceptions. And just for those of you who are interested in the history, the 1990 Act was deemed unconstitutional by the United States Supreme Court in 1995, but it was rewritten. So if you Google just enough to be dangerous and you see, oh my gosh, this law was overturned, keep reading. It was rewritten. It remains unchallenged at the Supreme Court level, and it is still in effect. But it has some really important exceptions. It doesn't say no one can ever carry a gun in a school zone. Exceptions include licensed concealed carry holders. It includes anyone who contracts with the school. So our teachers could contract with their school district to be allowed to carry, or they could be concealed carry holders. Probably minimal training there anyways, if you're going to carry your firearm to work. And we also allow law enforcement officers, of course, to carry in a school zone. So while generally schools are gun-free zones, there are some allowable exceptions, and people need to start taking advantage of that if we are going to validly fight against the criminals. State laws can also be problematic. So my home state of Idaho is a pretty good example. We have a typical gun-free school zone type state law that says you can't carry into a school unless you meet certain exceptions. And again, one of the exceptions is people can be licensed by the school district itself to carry firearms into the school. So in other words, if a school district says, you know what, we're going to allow our teachers, if they meet certain requirements, to carry to work in order to defend our children, they could do that. They can buy guns and arm the school. And we have a school district in Idaho. We actually have 3 of them, but Garden Valley was, I believe, the first. And Garden Valley School District in 2014 said, we're not going to be a gun-free zone. We're not going to allow this to happen here. And they bought rifles, and they have them secured, and they have teachers who are trained at least 4 times a year, and they know how to defend those children who are in their care. So Garden Valley spent money to actually purchase firearms for use in self-defense, and this little school district in Pennsylvania instead spent $1,800 on mini bats for their teachers. In Garden Valley, where they have had armed teachers since 2014, there haven't been any shootings, either by good guys negligently discharging a firearm or by bad guys coming into the school. And I think those signs that they have up saying, we're going to defend ourselves, are pretty helpful. So then we get to the new law that's been proposed by Congress. And of course, this came out right after the Parkland school shooting and all the kids in the media and all the misinformation flying around. And Congress said, we're going to do something. And the do something has a big exception. So you want to talk about exceptions. The big exception to the $51 million that would be spent in this effort to help schools develop threat assessment systems and anonymous reporting systems and improve school security through the use of technologies and increased personnel. I don't know if that means increased personnel without guns, because the big exception at the end is none of the money in this bill would be used to arm teachers. The most controversial gun-related provision proposed in the wake of the shooting, one endorsed by President Trump. But this bill says, nope, we're not going to do that. And at the end, they have this special little box that says, no funds to provide firearms or training. No amounts provided as a grant under this part may be used for the provision to any person of a firearm or training in the use of a firearm. So, do we need this law? I mean, I suppose some good could come out of it if schools really don't have a threat assessment system and they want to train their personnel to be a little more aware of who the students are. But I'll tell you what, in my experience, people know who the people are. They know when there's a problem. They don't really know what to do about it. And when that person chooses to act, they're going to be left defenseless. This bill does nothing to help that. And the reason I say people know when there's a problem, we can't always predict who the problem's going to be. But the kid that's keeping the list of names of people he hates. And I prosecuted a case like that years ago where we had a high school student who, everyone knew he came from a broken home. Kids made fun of him. He was keeping lists of people that he wanted to kill. He was reading books about serial killers who he idolized. And sure enough, as it turned out, he decided his life's goal was to be a famous serial killer. He didn't go to the school and shoot people, though. He stabbed a child, a 12-year-old child that he was babysitting, 88 times. And then he went to that child's sister's house and was going to kill her as well, but he was caught on his way there. And so, did people know that child was a problem? They kind of did, but he didn't have any formal counseling record. He hadn't broken any laws, so there really was no way to deal with it. If we could figure out a way to get kids like that some help and get them into counseling, certainly that's a worthy endeavor to stop the criminals, but that's a whole other show. In the meantime, we really don't know which one of these people will actually carry out the threat and will act and will start slaughtering our school children. And the only way to defend against that is to make sure that we are taking the necessary precautions. We are preparing for the worst. We hope for the best, but we plan for the worst. And if there ever is an active shooter situation in a school, we have people trained and armed who can deal with it in a way that's going to save lives. Thank you for watching The AK Show.
This is Alex, AK Kincaid, and thank you for watching The AK Show.